Hi everyone. Have you ever woken up someday and just feel like your brain hasn't woken up with you, or it hasn't turned on, and you just don't feel like doing anything that day? So I thought I'd share with you today a few of my tips what I do to stay productive as an Oxford DPhil student, and also share with you a bit of my life. Good morning. So today I'm at the Schwarzman Center for the Humanities. I have an online meeting at 9:15, and I booked one of the rooms at the library to use. It's around 8:45, and the library doesn't open till 9. So I'm just sitting here waiting for the library to open. And I got myself a lovely hot choc from the cafe, just to start myself off from the day. Okay, so I just finished my online meeting, and that went really well, and the conversation was really interesting. And now I have to start editing my paper. I just got an email from my supervisor with a lot of comments and questions on my paper. And so one thing, I've been asked sometimes by my friends, and they ask me, is it difficult to write a research paper? And so my answer would be, it's not difficult to write a paper, but to write a good paper is difficult, because if you think about it, what is a good paper? So basically, a good paper is one where all the elements come together, and it shows your thinking, your sharp thinking, and how everything fits together. So for example, you need to have the motivation of why you want to do this research topic. Why is it important? Why is it interesting that people want to read your paper? Then if you have a conceptual framework, or you have to kind of explain like how all the elements fit together and why you think it fits together in a certain way. And once you do that, your methodology also has to fit into your research question on why this methodology would be the best way to answer your research question. And your findings also have to be of interest. So, you could do research, but then your findings is not something that's very interesting. And so how would that paper be used later on? So I think to get a good research paper, you need to have all those elements fit together. And it's important, and it's a work in process. So the final paper that you see published online, sometimes it goes through multiple versions and iterations of the paper. And so I had my first draft, and I've got comments from my supervisors. So I'm going to have to work on the second, third, fourth, fifth draft until we finally finalize it. But with each draft, it gets better, and I think the thinking gets clearer. And that is part of the training of a PhD, is how to think about thoughts and concepts and really clarify your thoughts. Yeah. So that said, I better get back to work. See you later. Let's talk about productivity and being productive. And like any good PhD student, you have to first define what the problem is and understand the word exactly. So what does productivity mean for you? So for me, productivity, or being productive, is about being consistent and the behavior that I have that will help move me towards reaching my goal. So it's not about me having motivation or not. Sometimes you feel you don't want to do it, you have no motivation, but how can you still be productive and still make progress towards your ultimate goal of finishing a certain section of your paper, or a certain research part that you have to get done? So productivity is really about being intentional with your time, being focused, and making sure that you have actually made some meaningful progress towards your work, whether or not, emotionally you want to, or you have the energy or not. But at least you're making some, some advancements in your work. So that for me is how I define being productive. Now that we've defined what being productive means, this comes to my first tip, and that is to really, lower your bar a bit and start really small. So what I mean is sometimes, you have to know yourself. You wake up and you're just not there. You're not feeling like you want to move. You don't feel like, oh yes, you have the energy to go out to the library and write 10 pages or, read your book. And you just want to take it really slow that day. So the way I do is to start the day really small, really slow. And that is just to write something in my journal. And, I'll start with a few sentences, and then maybe I'll, without any expectations. And then after that, I'll start writing more, and somehow for some reason, that action movement wakes my brain up a little bit. And it doesn't always have to be, journaling. It could be doodling as well. So just do something that really starts your morning quite slow, and something that will wake your brain up a little bit more than it is that day. And it could be for a number of reasons, but just do something that wakes you up. So starting the day small, with something you love, it doesn't always have to be journaling. It could be, making yourself a nice cup of coffee, a nice cup of tea, going matcha, or having a nice walk. But for me, journaling really helps. And I love this beautiful pink flamingo lamy pen that my husband got for me. And every time I pick it up, it brightens up my day. And I found this beautiful Herbin ink to go with it. It's called Bouquet d'Antan. It means bouquet of yesteryear. And it's a beautiful ink that really evokes a sense of nostalgia and romanticism. It has that kind of vintage aesthetic that makes you think of that old English cottage garden in the Cotswold somewhere. So, it makes me feel really energized and to really enjoy the pleasures of ink on paper and the noise, the feeling of, the nib on the paper. So for me, that is something that kind of wakes me up and make me feel ready to start the day. So you find that thing that start small. Find a thing that will wake up your brain, whether it's, going for a walk in the garden, making yourself a cup of matcha, or just doing something that you love, playing with your dogs or your cat. And so that's my first tip, is to, start small, lower the bar for yourself that day. Don't expect too much, and start with something that you love. And so my second tip is to really reduce decision fatigue. So sometimes, you have so much to do and you're just tired thinking about what you have to do each day. So one way I reduce my decision fatigue is on a Sunday or Saturday, I have a weekly calendar in front of me, which has all the days, and I have it in time blocks. And then I set out, what I will be doing each day. I set out my goal for the week, so I will know that, okay, this week I have to maybe finish this section, or this week I have to finish this report. And so I already thought about that, a few days before I start the week. I already thought about what day I will be doing what, and I will know that, for example, at lunch I may have an appointment with a friend, or I will meet someone for tea, or I'll have an early morning meeting. So I've already planned those days in advance, and so I already know what I have to do when I wake up, and that way it reduces, my thinking of what I have to do, and I make sure that I wake up and I do it, and that seems to help keep me productive, and knowing what my week ahead will look like. And that also means for me that I have the same schedule almost every day. So I do, sleep consistently at my bedtime, and I do try to eat consistently and make sure that I have good nutritious food, because that is very important also to making sure that you stay healthy. So we talked about, starting small and then setting up systems and making sure that you have a routine that works for you and reduce decision fatigue. And my third tip really is about also being flexible. So what I mean by this is knowing yourself and knowing what you feel that day. So not saying that you just abandon, but to know how to manage your energy. So for example, on certain days, you may have the energy to really, write a lot, and you'd be very productive in your writing. But at some days, you're just not in that mental mode for writing, because writing actually requires a lot of brain power. And so maybe what you could do to stay productive is to instead, maybe read something, because as a researcher, you have to always read a lot of papers and read a lot of books. So maybe, today will be a reading day. So even though you've maybe set up your goal, your systems, but you also be flexible with your energy management. And you know that, today will just be a day that you will read. Because doing a PhD, you always have a lot of tasks ready for you to do. And, making sure that you want to get them done in a certain day. But you also know that maybe today is not a day that you write, but today maybe will be a day that you will read. And, kind of summarize what you're reading. And so you choose the task that really fits your energy level. And so for me, that is something that's very important. So at least every day, I'll try to start something. And if it's maybe I'm not being very productive with my writing, it's not really progressing, I can't think about my sentences, it's not coming out, I'll switch tasks and I'll maybe read a paper. I'll take notes on what I'm reading, or maybe I'll read a book. And for me, that, changing up tasks a bit always seems to help. And so my fourth tip is to be aware of, distractions. So for me, I get easily distracted by, let's say, my phone. And so what I would do is I try to, put it away in my bag when I'm working, so that I don't see the screen, I don't see messages popping up. I turn off the notifications, I turn off the sound, so that way it doesn't distract me. I also get distracted by, for example, if I know on a certain day when I meet friends or have appointments, usually those days I always feel a bit more distracted. Because I'm out and I'm about, I'm talking to people and I get energized. So one thing I do to avoid my distractions and make sure that I have days that I really need to write and get things done is to really I try to put all my appointments on the same day or the same afternoon. And so that day I would know that, okay, this is the day that I'm allowed to be, this kind of distracted, and I'm not going to be maybe getting so much written work out, and that's okay. So minimize the distractions or group your distractions together. So that's what I do. I'll give myself, for example, I want to maybe, just laze around and doom scrolling on my phone, but I'll give myself an hour in the evening to do that. And then I try not to look at my phone for the rest of the day, or not to have many appointments. And so I minimize my distractions. And this brings me to my fifth and final tip, which is to really be kind to yourself. I think a lot of time these days we take ourselves so seriously that we beat ourselves up for not having a productive day, for not being able to write that section we wanted to write, or to be able to finish everything that we had planned to. That's all right. Tell yourself that it's okay. You did turn up, you did your best, and you gave it all your best. And that's important, is that you tried. You did, put in your systems, you did kind of plan your schedule out, you minimize your distractions, you looked at your energy. And life happens, sometimes things work out, but sometimes they don't. And the point is that you tried and you work towards being productive. And, even athletes, they train their whole life for sports and competitions. And the important thing is that they turned up. And it's not something that's emotional, but it's something that you put in the behaviors, you put in the system that allow you to turn up and to work at it. But sometimes it doesn't always go your way, and that's okay. So those are my 5 tips. I hope you enjoyed my 5 tips on how I stay productive as a DPhil student. And, put in the comments whether you agree or not, or what are your tips on how you stay productive. And if you enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Goodbye.